Welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at the classes and a tier list on what are the best classes in the game in my opinion, for what I like and what I prefer, but also potential for power and damage. So there will be two different tier lists in this video. But before I get into it, I'm giving away 350 gold, so like the video, subscribe if you're new around here, leave me a comment down below telling me your favorite class from this list and pretty much your tier list. Throw in your tier list, S, A, and B, and C, and D. Tell me what lies where. But let's get straight into it. Now, we're not going to mess around. We're just going to fly through this as quick as possible. This is my preferred build. So I have a monk. That was my first class. I have to put it in A. I do. It's not an S tier character, but for me and what I enjoy in terms of playing defensive but also a little bit of attacking, I think the monk fits very nicely into A. The killing palm, even though people don't like it and it's limited, I prefer it. I like to see things pop up on my screen and then be able to go and hit that thing and then get a buff from that and then use that buff to take out a whole bunch of enemies. I just think the monk is fun, and I think it's probably the most unique class from all of these, apart from maybe witch. But personally, I just love the monk and I think it deserves an A slot from my personal beliefs. But let's move forward. So we're going to go with sorcerer next. I haven't played much sorcerer. I'm only like level 5, but it's a typical magic build, at least for the early parts of the game, and I tend to stray away from them in most games. I've had fun and it's been, you know, consistently good. I just don't have an attachment to the character like I have to all the other characters. So sorcerer for me unfortunately has to go into B. Then we have witch. Now witch for me is something I always go for. I like hunters, I like things with minions and pets. But the witch on this I don't particularly think is that great to play. It might be really powerful, especially towards endgame, but feeling it and playing it just didn't resonate with me for some reason. So I think it's because the minions die so easily at the start of the game and you just feel like you don't have them up. I have a build where you blow them up as well, so I need them alive. So I think it's going to have to go between bottom of A and top of B. For right now, we'll throw in top of B. Next up, we have the ranger. Now, ranger is my newest class that I've been leveling up, and I've been having a lot of fun. So I think ranger definitely likes to fall in the A tier. We have poison abilities and good range damage, and you could just stand back and spam. And if that's your kind of thing, I think, you know, you're really going to love both the ranged characters, ranger and mercenary. But I think ranger in general is just a good, solid, consistent class all round. Then we have the mercenary, which I'm going to spoil it now for both of these tiers, is going to be in the S class because it is the best class in this game, whether it's endgame damage and ascendancies and just all-round general damage and consistency and fun. I think the mercenary just takes the mick. There's so many different elemental attacks you can do. There's grenades, there's gas grenades, there's just downright obscene amounts of damage from the normal attack. I think it's just S. There's not much else I can say about it. It's S. Now warrior, I think people are kind of like really frustrated with melee classes at the moment, and warrior is, or it should be, you should be able to take a lot of damage. You're a warrior, right? And a lot of people are really disliking warrior from what I read and what I see, but for me, oh boy, I love warrior. It's gotta go in the S class. The things you could do with this class, whether you jump in with the rolling slam, I can't remember what it's called, cause people to be in a stun state, and then use bone shatter to hit that person to blow up everyone around them, and then have herald of ash, where when you kill someone that also explodes and ignites fire. It feels so much, it just feels so good, and it's just so much fun. I'm tripping over my tongue because I just want to talk about how good warrior is. So for me and my personal use and what I've experienced, this would be my tier list. So a lot of tier lists came out when the early access came out, and I think a lot of people didn't really explore all the characters, so they took someone like mercenary and dropped them all the way down because it just felt like you firing a weapon from range. But honestly, I think any tier list now would have Mercenary as an S tier. It's phenomenally powerful. It's got the range, you can get out of there and you can get in close. You've got the grenade build, the Grenadier Ascendancy, where basically you can just have explosions all over the screen. I don't think there's an argument that right now Mercenary is the best class to use throughout the entire game and in endgame. But just behind that, I haven't played much Sorcerer, but I've seen things and Sorcerer is incredible. I personally would drop Sorcerer down to A just because of the mana problems that the class can have at the least at the start of the game. But things I've seen at endgame, I don't think anyone can argue that Sorcerer is just ridiculously powerful. Next up for A tier, we have the Monk. Now, Monk could probably be higher into the S tier, but I think just in general, the Monk feels limited in a lot of ways, and it feels slower than it should be in terms of how a Monk should play. That's just my personal opinion. So I think that a lot of people could slip it into S tier, but for me, I think a fair judgment would be A tier. I think, you know, there's a lot of people who would drop it down to C tier because they don't like the way it plays. So I think in terms of damage, power output, potential, you know, I think it goes into A tier, and I think it also goes into A tier because it's very squishy and it can die very quickly. So, you know, I feel like that pulls it out of the S tier for me straight into A tier. Joining A tier, I think, would be the Witch. Now, the end game Witch builds you can have, whether it's a Blood Mage or just have really strong, powerful minions that don't die straight away, I feel like just gives you such an advantage in many, many ways that you cannot ignore that this should be an A tier. Now, I feel like you could interchange these, but I'm going to leave Witch higher than Monk personally because I feel like there's way more you can do with this character in terms of builds, and I feel like the damage output and potential of this character is phenomenal, on par with the Monk, but I think the Witch just has extra things for you to access and build around, so I feel like Witch is definitely up there. Then we have Ranger, so I'm putting Ranger in B and I'm putting Warrior in B. Now let me talk about these. I don't know which one would be lower. I'm going to put them joints. I'm not going to say one's lower than the other. I think Warrior, while has some really good builds, I think it probably shines more in early game than it does end game from the things that I've seen. Now, I'm not saying you can't have an overpowered broken Warrior, but it's going to take a very certain build to get to that point, and it's going to take a very certain type of player to make it work consistently. I feel like melees in general aren't great in this game so far, and I think Monk just has extra things when it comes to melee, you know, like killing palm and stunning palm, being able to jump from range and hit and being able to escape. Warrior is just in your face smashing people, and while that's fun and this game does a good job of making that work, it doesn't feel as strong and as powerful as it should, and I feel like Warrior probably slips down the tier list a little bit. And Ranger, while also really, really good, you know, you can fight from range much like the Mercenary can, and I haven't seen many of the ascendancies and builds for Ranger, so I might be completely wrong here, but for me it just feels like a ranged character. It does what it does really well, but it just doesn't feel like there's going to be anything that improves the character beyond what it is at the early stages of the game. That's just my opinions though. Let me know what you're thinking down below in the comment section. Agree with me, disagree with me, just be respectful. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what people think. Thank you for watching. I've been easy now. You guys have been awesome.